high. In this instance, of course, the drawing shows clearly that even with the variance, this building will be the same height as the one beside it. Do we have that picture up there, Shimon? So, Council can't put this lot behind it, but as far as the lot beside it goes, the height there is quite similar, so I don't have any trouble with that one. Again, this is a little bit of a general question, Your Worship, but I'm wondering about playground and that kind of thing in R5 zones, and what the responsibility of the developer might be for playground space.
I guess the responsibility at this point in time is the development cost charges, and a portion of that goes towards park. And so essentially in an area such as this, where we anticipate and are promoting high density development, we're the responsibility of the city to provide playground space. In this particular case, Fletcher Park is the closest location. The other way of not so much dealing with playgrounds, but space on the site, is the percentage of parcel coverage, how much land can be covered with building. If it's not covered building, it may be covered by parking, but there's also a landscaping component of that. It's considered on a site-by-site basis. There's no specific minimum or maximum.
Okay, and I don't have any trouble with the variance of lot coverage here, especially with a lot of them. So understand that how much, approximately how much would a development like this pay in development cost charges towards parks? Is that possible?
24,000 maybe? We can confirm that for the...
Okay, so that's your ballpark. So what will happen then is we collect the money from all of those, the council deem by the park and Fletcher Park.
That's correct, in consistency with the parks plan and the projects identified in the DCC plan.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Blaine.
Yeah, I just agree with Councillor Harrison's comments with regards to maximum height in R5. We've had people at public hearings state that we seem to be varying all our rules all the time, and although I don't agree with that comment, that's why we're here, is to deal with variances. I just think that building height seem major variances, and when we're dealing with high-density housing, you're already building a fairly tall building, and then people have a chance to speak against height, which is one of the biggest arguments people have against variances. So I'd like to see us review the whole measurement. I understand it's from the lowest grade, and it can be really confusing, and I think that the fewer times we have variances with regards to height, the easier our job will be. So I'd like to have that reviewed. I'm in full support of this. As Councillor Harrison said, it's not any higher than the building beside. I have no problem with that variance. I don't have any problem with the maximum parcel coverage because of the underground parking and the setbacks and projections and retaining walls. I mean, I'm in support of all of the variances. So as I've said in the past, I just want to see something happen with this piece of property, and that's why I voted against the previous change to the but I'll vote in support of the amended proposal.
Councillor Kendall.
A couple of things when we were discussing about height and the variances. I imagine that height was based on, like, heights between floors have floor to ceiling have really changed over the past few years. It's not unusual to have 9 and 10 foot ceilings now. So I imagine this was based prior to design, would it not be? Like for our bylaw? So
possibly, and that's one component that goes into, I guess, creating height on the property. As mentioned, slope and how we calculate it is one thing. The difference between 8 and 9 foot ceilings. There's other different roof lines, roof pitches. There's a number of things that go into, I guess, creating height.
yeah, that would be one big one I could see causing. And also I wanted to ask, is this a specific building, like 55 plus, or is this for everybody?
No, it's not.
No?
It's not.
It's for anyone.
It's with 9 wheelchair accessible units, more than likely it is going to be for seniors. But at this point, we're not calling it senior building or the other way around. Councillor Gannon.
I was just curious, like when we get a development permit and we pass variances, is there a time period in which they develop it?
Yeah, a development permit is good for 24 months.
And the other question I had, I was just curious, like when when a development is going to put in more parking stalls than required, they need a variance for that? That's,
No.
no. And I had a great improvement on that corner of them, for sure.
Councillor Izet.
Couple points. One, in relation to the building having 9 wheelchair accessible units, I'm just curious in terms of redeveloping that sidewalk along the 4th Avenue frontage and then tying it into our other sidewalks. I know this has come up as a preliminary item for the Social Issues Committee, but will the sort of sidewalk accessibility for that area and connecting all the way to the downtown be such that it's got the appropriate cuts in the sidewalk further down as well away from this area for accessing via wheelchair? Because I'm just curious, because I haven't looked in detail, but it was just something that I thought came up with the reminder that there were 9 units and they're wheelchair accessible.
Yeah, you should certainly, the new side will have all the wheelchair down and access points. 3rd Street between 4th Avenue Southeast is a project that we would like to upgrade in the future. They're expensive, but it is one. The sidewalks are getting into good condition, and the street hydro poles are on the outside, on the road side of the sidewalk. So we would like to improve that whole road with curb gutter and update and replace the existing sidewalks.
If I may, what I would say is particularly if this is a unit that encouraging people potentially with wheelchair accessibility reside there, then certainly I think we have to potentially escalate or look to how we can ensure that somebody living there could make it to the downtown safely without having it onto the road, etc. So we may have to escalate either the roadworks or sidewalk improvements that the Director of Engineering has indicated, or else at least consider some interim measures to adjust access to the sidewalks in the area. I wanted to make, per Councillor Harrison's question about DCCs in relation to parks, I know Fletcher Park is the nearest sort of agency park area, but I think this brings to mind the whole issue of more sort of neighborhood parks. That Fletcher Park is sort of a community park, and it's not that all that far distant, but it might be to the city's advantage to look at, how could we incorporate into this general vicinity a small sort of neighborhood park to provide some offset for the increasing density of how, saying, Fletcher Park's just there. I think that may be another case where we have to review the parks plan in relation to, once we start getting high density development, I think we have to add a little bit of the neighborhood park space. And lastly, I think Councillor Kentel had a comment. I just was curious as to if she wanted to give it with regards to the residents at 430 you were saying, if I may.
Okay, I had a phone call from them, and all residents in the area received this notification, and they've done quite a bit of upgrading. It's a young couple that have bought that house, and they've done a lot of upgrading to it, and they're concerned, of course, that anybody that has a balcony on that side, they won't have any privacy, and I mean, there's a balance. I know that they're atrocious right now, and of course they aren't very pleased with that either, so it's a matter of, they wondered, and I'm sure he'll be here to speak to it at the hearing, whether there'd be some type of screening that could be done for them, and I said I imagine that most of whatever for privacy would have to be done on their own property, because I wasn't sure how it could be handled otherwise, but I'm sure he'll be here to speak to it when we do have it.
Councillor Elias.
Thank you, Your Worship. First thing I'd like to comment is the building height. What generally restricts us from going more than 4 stories besides the bylaws? Is our building type? Is it the wood frame construction?
Yeah, the building code has some limitations once you go beyond 4 to 5 stories. You can
Okay.
go from non-combustible construction. There's a number of other cool things that trigger it.
Okay. So that will take some work in our OCP. And the other question I have for staff, Your Worship, is further to my comments earlier about the recycling room. Is that something that staff will work with the developer to incorporate for our public hearing, or is that something that I have to make a motion for?